Ladies and gentlemen, in this episode, you are going to hear opinions. And while the podcast is endorsed by Uriah Heep, the opinions of the host and various guests do not necessarily represent the opinions of the band or any of the members past or present. With that being said, let's celebrate the music of Uriah Heep. Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, bringing you another song. We are working on the album Firefly at the moment, and it is going swimmingly, I must say. Great album so far, really nice, fresh sound, lots of energy back in the band, which is great to hear. And we'll get to that song in just a couple of moments. First, if it is Monday, and I hope you guys all had a great weekend. It is, I don't even know what day it is. It's Wednesday for me, and we are, as I'm recording this, we are right on the edge of 20,000 downloads. And I suspect by the time this airs, we will be over that. So thank you to everybody who has taken the time to listen to the show, to leave feedback, to put ratings on it, especially on Apple Podcasts and also Podbean. Those are the main two places I see things. Appreciate all the ratings, the reviews, the kind words that people have sent. And speaking of people that have contributed to the show, there are some wonderful people that, of course, I want to take a couple of moments to thank. First of all, you may notice in the show notes there is an additional website link for my dear friend Elke, who lives in Germany, and she was very, very sweet and donated another $30 to the show. Thank you, Elke. Go check out her website. Her artwork is absolutely beautiful. She really has an eye for just for catching something that warms your heart. And I really appreciate that. We definitely need more of that in this world than we have. And I would also like to thank the patrons of the show. We have at the $5 Easy Living tier, we have Kenny Wymore, and Kenny won the March, I guess it would be the April contest for, or the monthly drawing, I should say. And I have sent out a note to him. He has responded. I haven't had a chance to look, but he is the winner. Congratulations, Kenny, and thank you for being a patron. If you're a patron, you get 2 entries. If you are subscribed to the mailing list, you get 1 entry. And if you are on both, you get 3. I know, it's exciting. So thank you, Kenny. Also, at the $3 The Wizard tier, we have Peter Voss, Goran Eriksson, and Frank Thielgaard Mortensen. Thank you all, gentlemen. It is much appreciated. And at the $1 Traveler in Time tier, coming to you from the Chill Factory, we have Airtight Gravesite. Thank you all very much for your contributions. They help me pay for the show, which helps me greatly. And it allows me to do things like bring a monthly prize to the show, which is awesome. Very, very important people that help financially. And there's also people that have helped in other ways. First of all, I want to thank you to Podbean, who is the host of the show. They are the ones that I upload the show. They automatically send it out to all the places. And they do some of the social media for me as well. If you see something on Twitter that says, check out the latest episode of the podcast, that is the auto feed coming from Podbean. And then if you see one that has like a picture or just some other commentary, then that's me posting. And thank you very much to Uriah Heep for letting me do the show and letting me go over each one of your songs and share them with your fans and people who are new to the band, which is always the most exciting to me. And also, I want to thank Audionamics, who I will not do a podcast without. They help me keep the audio sounding fresh and clean and wonderful and free of annoying artifacts other than my voice. Also, thank you to Scott Lazinski, who is the one that drew the stunning logo for the show, both the day and night logos. Depending on where you see the show, there may be a difference. Every season, I switch from the light to the dark logo or vice versa. Also, my brothers at the Deep Dive Podcast Network, we have Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast, or as I like to call them, my gateway drug to the Deep Dive Network. We have the Simple Man at Skinnerd Reconsidered, Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the other side. We have Rye at Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Paul, Joe, and David at the Lap of the Pods Queen podcast. And our newer members, we have Andy and Matt at Hawk Binge, the Hawkwind podcast, and Eric and Jonathan at Maiden A to Z Pod. They are doing an Iron Maiden podcast. Really cool to listen to. These guys are great. Check them all out, guys. Very fantastic podcast, as well as my dear buddy Brandon over at Metallicast. While it is one of the many Metallica podcasts, it is my favorite Metallica podcast. Also, check out Ace on Music, which is on Stitcher and YouTube. Ace is the manager of Uriah Heep, and he has a podcast that really goes into some interesting stuff in the music industry. So check that out. And if you're on the web, go to gottahear'emall.com and see what Allegra is bringing you in the way of news, mainly touring information over the history of the careers of both Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Deep Purple. But there are so many other things to enjoy on her site. So go check that out. And if you are wanting to follow the podcast somewhere on social media, you can go to the website and subscribe to the mailing list, put yourself on the Patreon. You can donate by PayPal as well. All the links are down there at the bottom. Also, all the links to the podcast network that I just mentioned above, they are all now on the page of the website, scotthaskin.com, and go to the Uriah Heep podcast link, scroll all the way to the bottom, and all that good stuff is there. And all the Uriah Heep links, we have links to Phil's albums and books. We have Russell's videos that he's done. We've got the Uriah Heep official YouTube page where there's always cool stuff going on. Mick is the one that is the most visible there. All kinds of great stuff for you guys to check out, and it's all on that page. And also the link to Uriah Heep's website that is run by Dave White, who is the master of the media of Uriah Heep. So thank you, everybody who has helped contribute to the show, who helps me keep it going. Otherwise, I'm just kind of a buoy floating in the water talking about music. Speaking of music, that is what we are here for, and we are going to talk about some music. Today, we are talking about the song, Who Needs Me? And it's interesting because it is literally just Who Needs Me. There is no question mark at the end. So is it a statement or is it a question? Is the question as to whether it's a question. For those of you who are playing along at home on the deluxe CD that I am working off of, there is also what's noted as an alternative live version. And we know I don't get into live versions on this show. However, if you have this CD or you don't have it and you want it, grab it, because there is a stunning 9+ minute version of this song written by Lee Kerslake. I could be wrong. I haven't looked on all of them, but I believe that this is the first song we've run into that was written only by Lee, which is always really interesting when a drummer steps up and starts working on the melodic side. And that's what we have here. So we're going to get into the song right now. Here it is, Who Needs Me by Uriah Heep from the Firefly album. Well, first, we got to talk about the beat of the song. I mean, this was written by the drummer, Lee Kerslake. And guess what? It's a shuffle. Shocking, but very cool because it really lends itself to this style of rock and roll very, very well. But instead of the typical double shuffle, he is actually riding on a crash cymbal here. It's kind of dialed back a little bit in the mix, which is nice because it allows everything else to cut through. Sometimes cymbal frequencies can bury things and make the mix a little bit muddy. But in this case, they've dialed it back, given room. We hear some really nice guitar tracks. I hear 2 or maybe 3, but the lead guitar is definitely coming up in the foreground of the mix. Very nice, smooth bass line, and just a great groove to get this song off to a good start. It's really interesting, the placement of the vocals, because the first half of each of those passes really sounds very staccato, dun, 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 right kind of on the beat, short words, not a lot of emphasis or decay. And then in the second half, it becomes a little bit more human and opened up again. And then back in the second pass, we have exactly the same thing, back to the staccato for the first half and the open for the second half. It's very interesting because I don't hear a lot of that style being used. So to me, it's really pleasing. It's something different and unexpected. And it's interesting how the vocals almost working as an additional beat on top of the beat that we hear from the drums kind of keeps it moving a little bit further. I really like that backing vocal, really showing that they just hit it together so well. Very interesting pitching too, something that you don't really hear a lot or almost not at all done in that manner, but it really sounds good. It sounds powerful. They're definitely working as a cohesive unit at this point and definitely sounds familiar. I really like the guitar sound on here too. Again, he's just writing that level of if you pushed it any further, if you push the pitch further, if you push the EQ any further on the high end, could really just make that sound awful. But it sounds so perfect where it sits, and yeah, really good stuff. Well, I thought there might be at least a short solo before the next verse came in, but not so much. And I feel like we're about to head into another harmony section here. But it's got a great groove to it, doesn't it? I mean, you can definitely tell that Lee covered the drum side of things between the bass and the drums playing so tight together, and just a great rhythm behind that on guitars. Sounds so good, fantastic. And the vocals are really interesting. I see it they're fairly consistent in that pattern, although they're starting to pitch up and down a little bit more in the first half, which I like. I think it adds just a little bit of flavor to this section. And once again, very well done. Well, it's a great solo, full of energy, just kind of like it was just waiting to jump in and do its thing. I love it. I love those repetition parts too. Those always feel good to me when they're done right, and they're just timed perfectly to fall into that groove within the rhythm of the song. Really some weird panning in there, though. I'm not sure what that was all about. It was like, I'm here in your left ear. No, I'm in your right. Kind of more in your left. No, I'm in your right again. But it dropped down in volume. I think sometimes engineers tend to pan things and not compensate for the volume that they lose as things change in the spectrum of, the audio field. But that's okay. We were still able to hear everything very clearly. We didn't miss any notes. It was just a little bit quieter, so the solo might have sounded a little more off balance than it really was, just because of that little panning experiment. But definitely a solid solo, one I would listen to over and over. In the meantime, the song is just grinding behind him and really just moves forward so quickly. don't know what it is, but that last part, whenever I hear bands do that, it just reminds me of, and I don't know why, but like a gospel choir singing just really passionately in a church, like when there's a lead singer that goes off and the backing vocals are kind of responding, like she's asking a question and they answer it, or vice versa, or she says something and they enhance that statement. So for some reason, it's just the way I think probably the format is of that type of vocal that reminds me of that. But it's very powerful. The music just is nonstop, through the whole thing. It just keeps that beat moving forward, got a great pulse to it. It's really interesting too when you hear singers riff the way that John Lawton does, because it's almost like he's just capturing some moment, and you don't really know what it is that they're capturing, because there's not a story there that's changing or growing that would inspire that kind of passion coming out in the vocal. It's just a sign of a quality singer that can pull off a section like that, where it's just riffing and emotion and not about the words that you're saying so much, because you're really just repeating the same thing over and over anyway. But definitely a cool song, and I can see why it has its place on the album. Like I said, check out that 9+ minute version on the deluxe edition of the CD. You'll probably find it worth it. If you like the song, I'm sure that you will absolutely love what they did live. So that's it for this show, guys. A great song as we cruise through the Firefly album. This week, we've got 3 more songs coming at you, and maybe a surprise on Friday. Okay, definitely a surprise on Friday. Hey, there's a surprise on Friday, so make sure that you tune in. But we have 2 other shows in between on Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure that you check those out. Why wouldn't you? You're a fan of Uriah Heep. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to the show, or you're wanting to become one. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to the show, because nothing else would make any sense whatsoever. In the meantime, you guys have a great week. I will be back with you tomorrow with another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!